done yet, hold on. So feedback was provided both, Heidi for her end with the budget as town clerk, as in when she accepts the budget, when she files the budget, her duties, what that entails. She also provided a nice packet of the budget process from the state comptroller's office, along with the calendar that was kind of integrated into this. You'll see dates in there. Those dates are from the New York State calendar. And then Kathy chimed in, she looked at it, kind of gave a list down of like what she does and how she does it, and that's also integrated in here. So at this point, you know, I hope everybody read it and reviewed it. I would love to get suggestions, constructive criticism, feedback on specific sections or missing, I don't know, elements per se on this. Okay, now I'll open it up to comments, questions, feedback, concerns.
I wanted to back up to the letter from the citizen to say, how are we gonna address it? Is that gonna be read? I think there were some very interesting, perspectives in there, that I think should be shared. How is that gonna be addressed? Because the citizen did ask that this be shared with the board and that we discuss it.
So shared with the board through correspondence, which is on public record. We have moved on now to item 1 of the discussion. So
you're skipping right over.
no, I said that.
No,
I said we have a correspondence letter from a citizen, Kimberly Salisbury.
okay, yeah, but you're missing my point. If this was something you were invested in and thought that there was key points, you would make sure.
We get correspondence all the time, we don't read them
Okay.
normally.
Well, then I think we'll make a note for Kim that you did not want the letter addressed.
Okay. Discussion number 1, back to the budget process and kickoff for 2026. So regardless of what this process looks like on paper, Kathy and I got together and we'll be sending out and starting off the budget process by the 30th of this year. So we will be sending out, you know, the budget worksheets to department heads and getting that out there for letters. That's also reflected in here. So regardless of how long we work on this for, that is happening next week with Kathy and I. We'll be into July, believe it or not.
I see that it states that the board is not expected.
Where, what section are we in?
That is section
3.6.
3.6.
Thank you.
I think that we
I
should,
disagree with that. As one board member, I believe we should, just like we always have for years, for more clarity and transparency, we go line by line, and we'll do that once we get the tentative budget.
So, if you look below last year with the objections, I mean, we can go line by line, but each line change from the tentative budget is going to require the motion, the second, the amendment, and then the vote long roll.
So be it.
That's fine.
I just, for sakes of time, that's all I wanted to accomplish.
No, I have no problem. I go do budgets regularly and we go line by line, even if it's a contract renewal from year to year, just to make sure that we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's. I think we owe it to our community to do that.
For me, having sat through 2 budget years, the year I ran, I attended the majority of the budget meetings as well as last year, being on the board and then seeing the rhetoric that shows up on social media about how we don't have guardrails and we're putting the town at risk. For me, it feels like we're lowering the guardrails, not going line by line. And that it's really important to have those conversations, look at the numbers and see potentially what we might miss.
I think the number last year, I have it written down in my old budget folder from last year. I think line by line, we went line by line, we ended up amending and changing, I think only about $2,000 in the whole budget.
That's fine. Let's do it.
Like I said, just for time's sake, I think one way is more efficient, but that's fine.
We're here to represent the taxpayer.
Anything else that stands out to you guys from what you've reviewed so far from this?
We'll
Or
just
any
monitor
questions?
how the process goes.
Well, I'd like to, approve a formal process at
far as I'm
something.
concerned, the formal process is here.
That's just a calendar.
The process is here, it tells you just what you can do, who's gonna do it. Right there it is, so all you gotta do is go by this form.
So that's, like I said, that's a calendar of a timeline of how we have to do it by law, and what we have to submit at certain times. The process of the Bonadil group recommended that we don't have is something in writing that shows which roles are which, who kicks off what, how it's portrayed, how it's operated, and how it functions. And I think that's really important to have on paper and in our binders. That way, you know, if, you know, God forbid, if Heidi's out, right? And somebody, her deputy has to come in for her, and this gives her a guideline, and she's not just going off of what I'm saying, or what you're saying, or tribal knowledge throughout the organization. It's on paper and have guidelines. So I'd like to see something proposed and approved on formally, and not just
I've started on that, I'll work on that,
work on what.
that proposal, based on a simplified version.
Well, so I spent 5 hours doing this with the state
Fine.
comptroller, the Bonadil group, Heidi and Kathy. I think this is very comprehensive. I think it's simplified. I think it represents our responsibilities to the taxpayers. You know, to spend more time waiting for you to review my work and then to come back with something else is not very efficient use of our time.
Fine, we'll follow your procedure and see how it goes.
I just don't, I'd like to remove 3.61.
Yeah, no, I took a note of the line by line.
Definitely getting rid of that.
I think it's important that we hear from our department head and even citizens as well during the citizen comment section.
During the public hearing.
No, during the board meeting, when we have a meeting, we have citizens comment section, I'm more than willing to listen to input.
Oh, yes, during public comment, yes. Not in a conversation, why are we?
Correct,
Yeah, okay.
correct.
Just clarifying. Yeah, but 3.6, I wrote a note to amend that. For the line by line, item.
What does that mean, amend it from your
Like,
lens?
Take it out. is
yeah,
what it means.
fix it, amend it, fix it, so.
Well, fix it and take it out are two different things.
Fix it, amend, fix it, change it.
No, I wanna be clear with where you're at,
Take it
because
out.
I don't trust you,
I'm not gonna have it.
if I'm being really honest. What I'm hearing is remove it. People feel more comfortable removing it. I
So
hear you
instead
say
of,
amend
instead
it.
of amending means, it says the board is not expected to review the budget line by line. So I'll go in there and I'll say the board may, I'll take out not, and I'll put may.
No, will.
Okay, we can put will. That's fine. And that's what amending means.
You also had in there under, section 2.3, advisory committee budget recommendations, bicentennial and Parks and Rec must be submitted no later than September 1st. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board does not have a budget, the rec coordinators do. And then also in referencing the language you used in here, Parks and Rec doesn't have a department head unless you're looking at.
Right. So I would be doing the park and rec budget for our general fund. So when the Parks and Rec Advisory Board initially started, we can go back into the meeting minutes and see that part of their duty is to advise and offer suggestions and recommendations on budgets. So that's what we're looking for at that point.
Right, my understanding is how it's been is coordinators have provided input as well as what they might be looking for the coming year budget. So for me, it doesn't feel clear, and I guess what I wanna say, and I'm not discounting about not having an organized procedure per se, but, I'm not comfortable with this. Because I feel like there's a lot of gray area in here.
So the Park and Rec Advisory Committee do not offer recommendations and suggestions for our budget for the following year?
Well, I think usually
Like they did last year, you know, the equipment, the inventory, the storage solutions, they were part of the process.
the equipment, but I wouldn't say the Park and Rec Advisory Board is making recommendations. I think we, move that to the coordinators. If they have things that they specifically are looking for the coming year, to be able to share that with the board before, the budget process starts. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think that's also in their job description.
I think it is.
So if that's the case, then they'll meet with me or email or communicate with me as the budget officer aside of everything else that's going on. So if the Park and Rec Advisory Board, I could take them out of this equation, but it was my understanding the initial intent of that board was to offer program recommendations and funding and budget recommendations moving forward for what they saw fit that we should be working on. That was the whole point of the committee.
Well, that wasn't the whole point of the committee, but I can get where you see that. The Parks and Rec Advisory Board, the way things have been moving is really empowering the coordinators to provide some sustainability and continuity year to year. And so I think, you know, the Parks and Rec Advisory Board would be deferring to the soccer and the baseball, softball, and basketball coordinators for anything that they might need.
So they're not gonna be recommending that we try to fund a part-time rec director position this year,
I'm just gonna say that.
because that's where the meetings went, when we get joint meetings, and that was my understanding, and that's why I put them in here, because I thought they were gonna be an active participating role in our budget process. And I would like them to be and stay that way. That's what I would like that to happen. Along with our coordinators offering, you know, less weighted recommendations of equipment and things that they need.
Okay.
Can I-
Leave it how you want, but I still am not really comfortable having a vote on this at this point.
No, we're not voting on it tonight, if there's no resolution on the table.
So but what you are saying is that this is the way things will be moving forward, this draft?
No, so with some of the amendments we already discussed, and just asking questions and going through a few things, and you guys getting comfortable with the language, I would say with probably 2 meetings, you know, the second meeting in July, I would like to have a vote on it. So that gives everyone plenty of time to review this and come up with notes and, any kind of changes. Does that sound fair enough? Other than the one stands out, like,
No, I'm good.
you know. So I will make those changes and I'll send it to you guys. Alright, number 2, discussion, planting tree approval. So we had a citizen bring to attention that they would like to plant a tree, buy a separate plot, plant a tree. With the confidence that it's a dwarf, some kind of dwarf variety, maple, I believe it was. I'm okay with it. I think we all kind of figured that we were okay with that. With the exception of going forward is maybe we need to kind of reword the rules next year for our cemetery about maybe like a donation space or like a designated area for tree planting. That way we don't have every other plot, someone's planting some tree and then we have kind of a nightmare 25 years from now with tree carving. So we got some dwarf idea. I love the Japanese maples. I wish someone went out there.
That's what he wants to plant,
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay.
which is 4 to 6 feet high, 68 feet wide. Yeah, these are, so that's something to look at for January.
Yes.
We look at the cemetery rules again. But azaleas are smaller obviously than a dwarf maple would be, but if we can go ahead and tell the gentleman he can buy, the next question is who's planting the tree? Who's responsible for planting the tree?
I would say the town should, but
He owns the land, he owns
He
the
owns the
land.
land, he owns the deed. So
I don't think the town should have any liabilities.
Yeah.
If it lives or not, grows or not.
well, that is true. Because I don't think we should be responsible if it doesn't grow.
Right, right.
So I would
and tell them where it can be pointed?
Yes,
Yes.
I think with some advisement from the highway department of location on the plot itself.
Yeah, and I think he'll be happy with that. I think he just really just wants to plant the tree.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
Humanize the tree, plant the tree.
Yeah.
It has to be a dwarf. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? Discussion number 3, sewer funds I put on here. So we're getting really close to flipping the switch of the completion for the regional sewer project, and part of that is even when but we're bringing it back up because we're really close to that operational expenses to the water authority. We get to maintain our reserve accounts and anything that's not related to operating expenses. At this point, or last month's report, there's a number there, we have our reserve accounts. However, when I met with Marty, their attorney and our attorney, at a joint meeting about a month ago, it was brought up that it might be beneficial to get a financial audit of the sewer funds prior to handing them over. With that being said, contractually speaking, the authority would pay for the service, because it's related to the operation of the regional sewer plant, and it's in the original execution contract when we joined the project. That was a red line for me, for sure,